Okay gang, we're working on the homework. This is section 2.3, number 67. So one of the things I want to point out is if you plug in 0, sine of 0 is 0, and then 0 squared is 0. So in the numerator you get 0, in the denominator you get 0. It's indeterminate. So you've got to then remember those two special limits I showed you. So if you remember, one of them was this. So you have to sort of figure out, well, how do I modify this so that I can use a special limit? Because I told you guys, if you get indeterminate form on the trig limits, you need to use one of those two special trig limits I gave you. Okay, so it looks most similar to this one, not to the cosine. So if I sort of modify this, so there's two sines here. So I can take off one, right? There's two sines here. That's the same thing as sine times sine. Sine times sine, but there's only one x, okay? So when I take the limit as x goes to 0, for this part right here, I'm going to use this definition. So this part right here, the limit of this part is going to be a 1, okay? But I also have to take the limit of this part, so I have to actually plug in 0. So in my head, I'm actually doing sine of 0. And on that, you should be on the unit circle. You're right over here on the unit circle. And I told you on the unit circle, the output is the second value. So sine of 0 is 0. Okay, because it's this one. So sine of 0 is 0. The limit as x goes to 0 of this is 0. The limit as x goes to 0 of this is 1. So you've got 0 times 1, which is going to end up being 0. Okay? So try to remember, when you get an indeterminate form on a trig limit, try to use one of those two special trig limits I gave you. All right, let me just see, keep continuing here, because I think the next one's very similar. Yeah, it is. Okay, so notice if I plug in 0, cosine of 0 is 1, so you're getting 1 minus 1, which is 0. So this is 0 over 0. So this is another case where when I try to plug in, it's indeterminate. So this one looks most similar to the other case. Okay, this looks most similar to this case. This one goes to 0. So again, it's sort of like you got to move the furniture around so that I make this look like this. So I have two of these. Let me write that a little better. I have two of these 1 minus cosine h, so that's the same thing as like pulling them apart, okay? Now this is the same thing as this. It's just written in terms of h instead of x, but it's the same idea, okay? So this part right here, the limit of this part is going to be 0, okay? Now for this one, you actually have to plug it in and crunch it out. So you're going to do 1 minus the cosine of 0. Okay, if you remember on the unit circle right here, this point 1, 0, remember the first value is the output of the cosine. So it's a 1. So this is going to be a 1 because cosine of 0 equals to 1. And then 1 minus 1 is 0. So this part is 0. This part is 0. 0 times 0 is going to be 0. Okay, gang, I hope that helps. Just try to remember when you're doing these indeterminate trig forms, trig limits, you've got to be thinking of those two special limits I gave you. Because if you get an indeterminate form, you have to modify it into one of these two. All right, gang, catch you again in another video. Bye-bye.